Studio is Pasi Ogola Amayo Pasi. Well, thank you for coming. She's a coordinator all in for climate action movement. She says she has to ensure that the petition gets to the authorities, right? We have Omar Elmawi, who's a campaign coordinator, and that's a decolonized campaign, right? And we also have Irene Wairimo, who's a national youth policy and governance officer at ActionAid, and she says that you have to bring other people on board, including women and the youth. All right, let's talk about, because climate change, every time we hear about climate change again, we hear about the adverse effects of the weather. But I understand, and this is from something I took from what you're doing, and say climate change makes human lives possible and affects all spheres of life. Climate change affects democracy, social justice, human rights, and such. I'd like to know how this happens. Let me begin with you, Percy.
Okay, I'll start by saying that green transformations cannot take place and cannot only take place if they ignore social justice issues. So maybe I need to say that again.
Yes.
Green transformations can only take place if we consider social justice issues as well.
Okay.
And I say this because effects such as deforestation, we're having the Mao issue now where people are moving out of the Mao forest for the sake of conservation. We also have to consider, where are these people going? Are they going to be compensated or given another land to stay? You know, their livelihood. So social justice issues, like you've said, contribute majorly on the climate change discussions.
Okay.
Recently we had an engagement in Kibera. And I was shocked to learn that Kibera actually means forest, because it was a forest back in the day.
I didn't know that.
I also didn't know.
I didn't know that.
So while doing engagements there with the youth and discussing energy issues within the community, we learned that it was a forest. And now, if you go to Kibera, there's nil or no tree at all. So when we are looking at deforestation, let's talk about biomass. 80% of the East African population depends on biomass in the form of charcoal and wood, because this is the more cheaper available sources of energy that they can afford. And with the deforestation and the cutting down of trees, there are income issues that come into play. There's energy poverty. So we need to look at green transformation and climate justice from an all-round social justice issue, or from a social justice perspective, so to say.
Okay, well painted. That's a new thing I've learned this morning. Omar.
Yeah, so for me, it's really a personal kind of topic because I come from communities that depend solely on natural resources. And we've seen climate change has a huge effect on most of these natural resources, be it in the form of the forests. Maybe when we were talking about Lamu, they depend a lot on mangrove to be able to build their houses, among other things. So we've seen that climate change, especially that has been induced through development, so it's either through infrastructure projects or through energy projects, is affecting these communities. And at the end of the day, they're not getting anything. So while they're losing their source of livelihoods, they don't know the reasons because they have a very little understanding on what climate change is and how it's caused. They also are a little bit maybe more religious than some of us are, and so we quite easily can, shift the blame to God and to all these other things that we are there to, and saying that maybe we've been sinning too much and that's why we are facing all these consequences. And so we're seeing the importance now of raising these issues and making the people who are actually the causes of the climate change, so be each project proponents to understand that they should be bearing the cost of the impacts that they're causing from their projects because they're affecting people in a very high level.
Okay, Irene.
So get this, in 2019 alone, climate change has increased the gap between the rich and the poor by 25%. So we're saying that as a result of climate change, we are rolling back the progress that we've made for the last 50 years in fighting poverty and inequality across the world. And if we have the rights of people, the human rights, right to food, right to shelter, all compromised by climate change, it will also affect democracy. Because if we have a system that is all in a form of a chaos, then it will affect civic participation, democracy, and other issues. So climate change affects human rights, it affects democracy, it affects social justices, it affects every other area of our economy and our society.
Please explain to me how climate change has increased that gap
How climate change has increased that gap.
between the poor and the rich.
Because we are seeing more and more impacts of climate change in forms of the floods, the cyclones, the landslides, the droughts, the famines, and something that was not there earlier, as I'd said earlier, that it was not experienced earlier. And so in regard to reaching, like, solving the issues around climate change, and also coming in and taking actions against the impacts of climate change, we are seeing that the gap between the rich and the poor is widening, that more people are being affected. Women and girls are all being impacted by the climate relief emergencies, the climate disasters, which were not there earlier.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that's how it happened.
That's how it
Okay.
happened.
Okay. So on the 20th, that is tomorrow,
Yes.
you will be part of what you're saying will be the biggest ever movement against climate chaos in the country, right?
Yes.
Who is expected to be, I know ActionAid is right at the forefront with this, but who is expected, and how are you mobilizing for this, and for what cause? Because we've tried to determine, to establish climate change is real and all, but how are you packaging this? Let me begin with you. Yes.
So let me just give it a global perspective.
Yes.
We have 150 countries that are participating in the global climate strike. So so here in Kenya, we are expecting to have young people join the climate march tomorrow. It's going to be a climate march. And we expect young people to come out and raise their concerns about, number one, we want rich countries to meet their financial obligations, because they're the main gas emitters in the world, and they have to pay their financial obligations to developing countries. And we also want to have the government commit to ensure that we stick to the plan of having 100% renewable energy by 2020.
By 2020?
Yes.
Sometimes I hear that and I think it's too ambitious. But before I talk about what I feel, let me hear from a woman.
Not too ambitious, and I hope we...
2020 is next year.
It's just 4 months from now.
Yes.
We're making real progress, and all the fossil fuel we have now is just medium-speed diesel generation, which we're not using almost all of the time.
Okay.
Yeah. But when we come to the topic and the question that we've asked, which is a good question, I think from the interest that we've seen, because after approaching different people that we want to do this, we want to put Kenya onto the map, we've seen over 35 organizations, CSOs, individuals, and people coming and saying they want to be involved. I won't mention names because I'll forget some and then it becomes a problem. But definitely we're seeing that. We're seeing how schools also want to come in and to speak about these issues, because let us not forget that this is really about the children, it's about the teens, it's about the youth. Because most of the people who are making decisions on climate change issues are people who are almost getting into the senior adults and the senior members of the societies, and most of them might not be here in the next 10 or so years. So while they're making these decisions which are going to affect the young people, so we're trying to make a case that the youth and the young people should be coming out and saying, like, hey, wait for a minute, this is our world. We're the ones who are going to be here probably longer than you guys, and definitely then it's in our interest that you guys pass policies and take actions that are in support on this. We've seen it in the forms of promises being made by the government. Definitely, as I said, our president promised by next year we're going to be 100% renewable energy in actually a national platform. So it was during the UN conference on climate change, and he made this promise. And he made this promise because already, even during the State of the Nation address last year, or was it this year, he also mentioned that we are already now generating almost 80% of our energy through renewables. What's left is mostly on diesel, and we've already had task force looking at these diesel generating plants, because we are not using them all of the time. They're too expensive, and they're also affecting our environment. So it's possible, and we are going out there tomorrow to commend the government first, and also now to at least try to convince them to take the next step of moving towards renewable, because it's the future, and we should be investing on a long term on something that many countries, including China and others, are closing some of these plants of theirs, including coal plants, in hundreds, and now investing more on renewables.
Okay. Okay.
I like what you said about how you think the commitment made by our president is ambitious. I like to just cite at that point that we are big in geothermal globally. We're big in hydro, and we have one of the biggest wind farms in Turkana.
Is it functional?
Yes, actually.
It's functional.
It's one of the best wind plants actually in terms of
It's
much.
But it's a
electricity
plant that has not injected anything to the national grid because of the controversy.
It has already.
It started injecting the national grid.
There is controversy and there are issues with the
Yeah.
community in terms
Yeah.
of the land and how it was given, but it's already.
And
on the grid.
even the project, the financials and all. Anyway, that's a topic for another day. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, albeit all the controversies.
Controversy. All right.
behind
Okay.
it
Sorry.
before you jumped in.
Yeah.
But then let me take it back to the youth and what's happening on Friday globally and also nationally.
Yes.
We are 100% committing to renewable energy by 2020. But then in the sidelines of that, we just did our first oil shipment out of the country. In the sidelines of that, we had the plans for the Lamu coal power plant. So there's a lot of mismatch in the direction we're hoping to achieve versus what the world is moving away from.
Okay.
So the youth petition, which is global in nature, we have over 100 petitions from different countries all over the world. So this is the All In for Climate Action petition, and Kenya is one of them. And one of the demands within this petition is that we need to begin to move away from creating new fossil fuel projects. So be it extracting, should it be extracting or financing new fossil fuel projects? We need to move away from that. So that's one of the demands from global youth and also here. The second one is we need to figure out how to quickly transition out of the dirty fossil fuels because the greenhouse gas emissions are contributed mainly from the actions from the fossil fuel industries, but also land use. So within the petition, we're also calling for increased sustainable use of land to enable it to generate for future generations, and that as we do that, it will also to go into sustainable agriculture and planting more trees to increase our forest cover. And I like what we have done recently with the whole ban on logging and the ban on plastic bags. So Kenya already has been cited as a leader in the green movement in this region. So we just want to amplify that and make sure that our leaders take it seriously for the generation now, but also for future generations.
Okay. I'd like to talk about specific policy demands that you're making in that petition, because you need to convince me, for example, why I need to sign the petition. But you said the petition is for young people, right?
No, it's created by young people.
Created by young people.
Yes.
And when you hear created by young people, I'm thinking, who are the stakeholders who was consulted? Who are these young people who created this? Or it's a group of people who sit and think on behalf of the young people?
No. So when All In for Climate Action started, the idea was born in May, just after we had concluded the United Nations Environment Assembly here in Nairobi. We had youth delegates from all over the country, from all over the world, who attended the UN Environment Assembly here. And in the process of that, we came across Youth for Climate Kenya, who were organizing the First Fridays for Future strike in Kenya. So the UN youth delegates there decided to join in with the school and ensure that the Youth for Climate Action Kenya, to ensure that the march was successful. And so on the 15th of March, we had the first students coming out and joined by youth who were here from different countries, but also from Kenya, to have the Fast Fridays for Future strike in solidarity with Greta Thunberg, who obviously is the founder of this school striking for climate change and climate awareness and climate justice. And so after that happened, we decided, okay, it's not enough to just go out in the street. We're just going to call out in the street. How can the youth have a greater impact from a policy perspective? So we decided, let's bring all the climate activists, youth climate activists from all over the world, to create a platform that then begins to petition our policy makers. And that enables us to have a policy entry as young people. So as we strike on the street for climate and raise awareness, we're also having an entry into policy to influence and have a seat on the table as young people.
That was brilliant. So it started from May. All right, so let me talk to you about the role of the counties, because we've spoken a lot about the national government, What is the role of the counties in this? So the counties have absolutely no role.
They definitely do. I think when we did embrace devolution, we definitely devolved everything, if not almost everything. And the counties are important to play on this role. One, because counties can make laws within their county setup. In terms of county laws, which are passed by the county assemblies. And these laws can tackle climate change issues. Because if you look at the Climate Change Act, which was passed in 2016, and we started taking climate change quite seriously since 3 years ago, and you're seeing that projects are supposed to have a component that they're looking at how this project is going to either exacerbate climate change. And definitely, therefore, the counties will come in here because these projects are coming to the counties. And the counties should say, you know, because we've been voted by the constituents of this county, because we have a right of ensuring all these policies and development projects that come to us should be, in a way, not affecting them. And I think what's also important is not just to have these laws, because Kenya has been one of the countries that we are really good at developing good policies, but the biggest challenge has been implementing these laws. Because you will see, like, the institutions that are supposed to look at these issues, including the Environmental Management Authority, it's had its own issues, including the fact that it doesn't have enough staff to make sure that they follow up and ensure that any person who's doing a project within a certain setup actually implements whatever they promise they will do to ensure that they do not exacerbate climate change and to ensure that this project don't have impact. So it's also important to start having these implementations being taken seriously, and definitely, just as importantly, we're looking at corruption, we're looking at other human rights issues. Climate change is an important factor, and we should give it the prominence and not just say, you know, it's a small issue, something that, you know, it should be taken care by the countries in the West.
Or yes, that's exactly what I wanted to say. Or it should be left to the others,
Yeah.
especially the big polluters of the environment.
Yeah.
So that's the way you're going. Do you feel adequate support, even as we speak about the role of the counties? Do you feel that they've come in, or you still feel they're outside and they need to be brought in?
I still feel the counties need to do more effort, especially in the coordination of action between the national government and the county governments in terms of solving the climate emergency. Right now, I think we have 4 county governments that have climate change policies at the county that approved.
4 out of 47.
4 out of 47. Yet, climate change is an issue that is affected at the county level, not at the national level. So I feel that the county governments are looking more towards the national government to solve the issue, but it needs to be a coordinated effort between the national government and the county government. And also this means that we need to have finance coming from the national government to the counties to assist in solving the climate adaptation plans.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the key message and policy demands, one of the things you're saying or demanding is the protection of citizens from the impact of climate change, as even you talk about implementation of the climate change policies. I'm just wondering how practical this is, or just bring me to the scope, how wide you thought about this, how you intend to do this.
The protection of
citizens, yes.
Well, protection of the citizens is about implementation of the national adaptation plans that are there in place, because we are saying that the government is doing a lot of effort, as Omar has said before, and we are still seeing a lot of people being affected by climate disasters and climate emergencies. However, the government can do more effort in terms of protecting the people from all these climate emergencies that are coming up. So whether it's the landslides, the floods, the droughts, by speedily implementing the national adaptation plans that are there.
Do you feel the counties and the national government are working together in the implementation of the adaptation plans?
Well, there is need for more effort.
Okay.
Yes.
There's need for more effort.
Yeah.
All right. The second thing I want to talk about specifically about the financing, because one of the big things in such big projects was it included in the budget, or under what framework is this possible?
Budgeting for climate
Yes,
change in
yes.
the country. Well, there are different bodies that have been set for climate financing. I mean, I can cite the Green Climate Fund, which I believe we have an office here that supports every single country. I think there is need to tap into that fund more seriously in terms of project proposals. And I can't really cite at this moment how effective we have been in tapping into these funds that are available. But I feel like there's more that could be done, but also within the NCDs, which are the nationally determined contributions that the governments give towards their commitment to keeping the Paris Agreement. I think there are various sources of financing that can come into play for this. I mean, just looking at it from a global perspective, the biggest emitters in terms of nation states are supposed to contribute to financing adaptation in the worst affected countries, which are usually the developing countries. But just recently going through the list of tentative speakers for the next UN Climate Action Summit, majority of the big players or the big states are not on that list. I know Kenya is number 28.
That's deliberate or by design?
You cannot tell, because I guess the countries commit whether they want to speak and share the commitments during the summit. But just looking at that list, there's definitely a shift. The worst affected countries, which are the developing countries, are the ones that are majority on that list. Where are the big players? We need to hear what they're doing. And with the whole carbon pricing and carbon taxing that is now gaining its way into the market, we how we are going to be affected by this, and who's going to be contributing to this, and how can we best benefit from this carbon tax or carbon pricing, and what are the implications for the worst hit nations, and how do we also benefit as the least emitters.
But you see, you're speaking about the worst hit countries, and you're also concerned that the majority on the list, which means to me their voices should be amplified and heard more. Is that could that be the mischief that the organizers are addressing this time around?
I don't want to call it mischief, but there is a looming sense of uncertainty as to why we're not going to be hearing from the big emitters during.
Probably they've been speaking all these years and nothing happened. So if they are heard, the most affected countries, I don't know what you think, Omar. I don't know.
I've always been a believer that it's the people who are hurting, they're the ones who should be speaking about the issues, because they know how they are hurt more. And definitely you shouldn't give someone who's been
hurting
them the podium to start saying how they can continue hurting them, or at least reduce the amount of harm that they will be doing. But definitely I'm also a believer that, while Kenya, the country itself geographically, it's one of the countries that could be or is hugely stricken by climate change. And so I'm thinking, while there are so many other funds, including within the United Nations, where you can get the green credits or something fund, where you can get some of this money to address or to do some climate change adaptation. But definitely, if you want to benefit from these funds, if you want to take action, you should at least cease and desist from having projects internally within your country that are actually exacerbating the issues. Because on one, you cannot claim or cry foul about something hitting you when you're actually part and parcel of contributing to that. So I'm saying, we are really at a position where we've made a lot of steps technological wise in terms of how we can actually develop, we can do many things within this country without using processes that have been there, for very many years, which we have been proven that now we have better ways of doing things, and that it's also quite possible to develop without exacerbating climate change.
Okay, because I remember in the years when the US, for example, declined to sign the Kyoto Protocol, for example, and they were the loudest, but yet they could not. Which is the latest accord? Is it the Paris Accord?
Yes.
It's the latest. It's the latest. Okay. Your view?
On the same.
Yes, on the same, yes.
Yeah, I also support.
Yes, in terms of countries that are speaking, because she wants big players to be right there at the top.
Yeah. It should be a combination of
a balance.
Yes.
No, I think they should listen more.
Yeah, I think.
But are they the biggest? Sorry, are they the biggest financiers also? The big players?
No, on the part of committing to financing.
Yes, committing.
No.
Yeah,
then why do you want them on the table?
Yeah.
Anyway.
So yeah, I get Amar's point that we need to hear what they are doing, because we are saying that they need to commit to finance developing countries who've been affected by climate change.
Okay.
But we're not hearing them.
We're speaking China,
Yeah.
Yes.
US,
US,
UK.
UK.
But keeping in mind, obviously, the US withdrew from the Paris Agreement.
I know, again.
Okay.
Again, okay.
And we also need to hear the voices of the people from those who are being hurt. That is the developing countries and how they want the things done. So yeah, I support both the points.
Okay, and when you speak about that and looking at the people on the table, I'm tempted to think this is why this is a youth-driven agenda. Because they're the most affected anyway, they have more time. Is that the reason why?
Yes.
Or there's a feeling that the people who have not been speaking, because I'm looking at this 16-year-old activist, you know, he's been given a big voice out in the world. And now this is a youth-driven initiative.
So basically, we've been saying that a lot of our leaders, the senior members of the society, have been speaking a lot, yet they're not the ones who are going to be affected by climate change, because by the time we get to their age, or somebody like Greta gets to that point, we are the ones who will be experiencing the impacts of climate change. Therefore, we're saying that we don't want any more speaking, we want action, because we are the ones who will be impacted by climate change. Even when Gary Mathai said, the generation that causes environmental pollution is not the generation that bears the burden.
Right. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's why it's a youth-driven, youth-led initiative and movement.
But will you be heard? Because that's another thing. Speaking is one thing, but hearing is another, and taking action is another thing. Yes.
And that is why we are calling on the leaders, and we are presenting our petition to the Ministry of Energy and Environment,
yes.
as well as also presenting our demands to the global leaders who will be meeting next week, and saying that in as much as we're speaking, we want to be heard, because we are the people who will experience the impact.
It's also important to note that of the population, about 70%, give or take, is the youth.
Yes.
And so for them, if they want to hear our issues, we're also going to get to the election point. And I think if the youth understand the fact that they're the ones who are going to be facing these consequences, then it might be one of the biggest election issues within the campaign, and something that we would be requiring our leaders to also address.
Okay.
About being heard, if I can just jump in.
Yes.
So the UN Climate Action Summit is on the 23rd. But the UN has also provided a platform for the youth to speak to the world leaders on the 21st of September within the UN Youth Climate Summit. So it is there in that the All In for Climate Action globally will submit over a million signatures that we have collected globally. But then, as that is happening on the global stage,
7 billion, you only married 1 million.
well, it's better than nothing.
Nothing, okay.
Yes. So, and that was the target, because we started in May and September was approaching. So I'm sure by the time we're having our next engagement, which will probably be COP25, we would have reached a significant number of people who are now demanding for climate action globally.
Okay.
So as that is happening on the global stage, we here at the national level and in every other country, the petition starters and the coordinators of All In will be submitting also their petitions to their policymakers. So it's something that's happening across
the board.
world. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And if a youth is watching and they're wondering, why can't they just leave it to you? Why should they be involved?
Because today's actions will determine tomorrow's future. You are the youth. You want to know what the world will look like tomorrow when our policymakers are no longer there, and it's up to us to lead and to show the way forward. So we have to ensure that climate action is taken today if our future is certain for us and even the following generations to come. It has to be now. Already the clock is ticking. The global temperatures have been rising. We're already feeling the effects even here in Africa that we've never heard of cyclones here, I mean. So we have to be all in for climate action across the board, and we invite, it's not only a youth or children's movement only, we invite the teachers, we invite the parents, we invite workers to come out and join the march on Friday, because it's their future, it's their grandchildren's future, it's our future, all of us. So.
Then that, Omar, brings me to the question of how much education do the youth have regarding climate change? How much and from where?
I think it's better off now. We are seeing climate change issues being discussed in schools. It's part of the curriculum. We're seeing laws being passed. We're seeing leaders even making statements around this. And while many people, whenever you see other people are doing an activity, you normally want to say, these are the experts, are the ones who know what to do. We'll just sit down and wait. But this is not really something to sit out. It's something that you need to make your voice out. And I've always been a believer, and I agree with the statement where a wise man once said that the biggest threat to this planet is the fact that everyone believes that someone else will save it. And so if we continue trying to push these responsibilities to other people when it's about your future, it's about your kids' future, it's about it's about everything that you hold dear and whether you're going to be able to make a living tomorrow. Because if we have more floods, we have more floods, more landslides, more cyclones, then how are you even able to do whatever you wanted to do that you say this is something that interests me? So at least we're not saying do this 24 hours of your day, but at least give it an hour of your day, and we'll be making a lot of money.
And there was a lot of fuss last week when we saw school children wearing the sacks and the brooms going out to clean the streets. And Kenyans were all like, oh, why is the government forcing my child to go to the street cleaning? But it's all about engaging the young children and the youth to know what the realities of right now. So we are saying we want the government to go a step further and educate our children and also our young people about the need to safeguard our ecosystem and also about the impacts that are there of climate change. So that way we own the whole process.
Okay, but what is Action Aid doing specifically?
In regard to so that's
educating educating the youth and sharing this knowledge.
We are creating awareness around the climate change issues even before the strike.
Even before the strike, you have been doing it continuously. In what forums?
So we've been doing youth forums, youth awareness forums in our youth hubs. So we've been mobilizing young people in the informal settlements, in the urban areas, even the young people who are being impacted mostly in the communities in Isiolo, in Baringo. We've been doing those awareness forums with them and telling them, okay, these are the impacts, these are the losses to your livelihoods that we'll be having. And that is why you need to join us.
Okay.
Yes.
Of course, you can't speak about climate change in 2019, right?
Yes.
Without speaking about the role of technology in all this. So perhaps let's discuss the role of technology.
Yes.
One, in dispensing knowledge, two, in collecting data and all. And I'll begin with you.
Okay.
Yes.
So our campaign is a digital campaign.
Okay.
I probably didn't say that. So the petitions are available online. So we've maximized on the power of social media to mobilize people towards addressing the issues, but also towards raising awareness among the general public. So I think in terms of digital technology, it's a key tool in this century and in this point of time. We are able to communicate through platforms such as Zoom, GoToMeetings. We're able to have sessions where we're having climate strikers or climate advocates and activists being trained.
What is the difference? Strikers, activists, advocates, what is the difference?
Just being polite.
It's being polite. It's a polite way of, because, when you hear, oh, we are going on a strike, already there's that notion of violence and disorder and throwing of stones. Yeah, but when you say climate advocacy or climate advocates, or, it gives it a more peaceful
face. Because tomorrow people will be afraid to come to town because you're striking,
No, we're matching. So tomorrow it's a match.
It's a match.
It's a match. There will be no violence.
Okay.
But just what I was saying about the digital platforms is, for example, All In for Climate Action, we've been able to bring people like the Climate Action Network to speak to the young petition starters about, the impacts, what's going to happen in New York, what should you know, just building the capacity of these young advocates to not only go and raise their banners, but also have the awareness that they need. I mean, I like what Greta said on the Daily Show the other day when she was asked, what is the one thing that people should do? And she said they should inform themselves of the impacts of climate change because awareness is a big issue. And so, for example, the All In for Climate Action, we've been going to schools such as St. Austin's Academy and planting trees with them and speaking to them, and the school has been very accommodative. The same thing with Brabant, who now have a sustainability program that then features what the different things that students can begin to do to also chip in more actively in protecting our environment and advancing sustainable living.
Okay.
So,
you know, Irene mentioned we go to the formal and informal sector, and then you just mentioned St. Austin and Brabant.
and I said that because, you see, this whole Fridays for Future and students striking globally, it didn't start from here.
Yes.
Truth be told, it started from Europe. And trickling down to here, it's been very, very hard to be able to even penetrate it to the national schools, which is now the main agenda for us. I mean, obviously, we're sure there's some activity going on in national schools, but we feel like on a global platform, it's been amplified, and the international schools, or the IB schools, so to say, have taken it up and embraced it because they have different nationalities within their schools who can then also link. So what is happening on the 21st is now the IB schools and the national schools are going to be having their own national climate movement with national students on that day. So
I'd like to talk specifically about day 1, 2, 3. So I'll talk about that before we end. But I just wanted on technologies, apart from just using technology to pass this message and to sign the petition and all, the role of technology in this.
Yeah, definitely. If you look at the country in Kenya, in the 47 counties that we have, not everyone is online and not everyone is on Twitter, on Facebook and other issues. So we've seen the importance of now also using modes of doing traditional kind of like sharing of information.
Like
and we're doing
signal.
this. No. I wish you could go back there. It was happy times.
Yes.
But definitely what we're ensuring we're doing is some of these communities where we know they do not have access to the internet, we have meetings with them. We have communities going to them and talking to them. Definitely one of the other strategies we're also implementing is ensuring that we're also targeting the financiers of some of these catastrophes. Because while we're saying it's the country and policies, but it's also people who are giving money for projects.
What do you mean targeting them?
Telling them that if you're funding a certain project which is going to have an impact on climate change, then you have a duty to actually withdraw your funding from this project and divest this funding into a more green project that doesn't have any climate change issues. Because while you're making a lot of money from all of this through your investment, you're affecting so many other lives in another sector.
Okay. Irene?
And also adding to what Omar is saying is, also in terms of when you're looking about the rich countries, how they're contributing, we're also talking about them contributing towards greener technologies for developing countries, how they can help us, even in the pathway towards a greener economy, how they can help us by transferring their technology to us. And secondly, we've used technology to identify the people who are like organizing similar activities in the country and also in the world. Actually, how the three of us met was through technology. We all signed up for events on the 20th of September at the Global Climate Strike website. So technology has really been helpful in like bringing us all together.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. We've discussed a lot, and I need to let you go. But talk to us about, I saw several hashtags here that you'll be using. There's hashtag climate strike, KE, but it's STRIKE.
Yes.
There is hashtag climate strike itself. There's hashtag climate justice, people power. There's too many hashtags. Are they on different days? Or whichever hashtag I get, I roll with it.
No. The main hashtag for the day is climate strike, KE.
KE with a STRI.
Yes, STRI. Because the global hashtag is the climate strike, so we want to identify ourselves
with Kenya.
KE.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. The justice, people power.
So those are, we are so many people that have come together, and each one of us is working through a certain angle on climate change. So we've given people the option of definitely having to use climate strike, KE, and then if you have something else that you want to communicate, then you can have your second hashtag.
Okay. All right. I know this is a 3-day event, right?
It's actually a whole week. It's
A whole week.
20th
Yes,
to
20th to
27th.
All right. So let me start with you, plus your closing remarks. Day one, what we expect, we've spoken about the march and all. Day two, I know there's a social media engagement somewhere as we close. So just say your part, then they finish.
Okay, well, day one, which
Yes.
is tomorrow,
Yeah.
definitely come out. We are having the 100% renewable energy march. Tomorrow, we're going to go to the ministries, right? And we're going to pass our messages there. We're going to have a statement. So we're calling everybody who cares for the environment and to come out and to march with us on that day. On day two, I know there's a variety, there's a mixture of activities that are taking place within different actors, but I know there's going to be an engagement between national schools and IB schools, and the students are going to come out and do some tree planting.
Okay.
I know within schools, there's going to be tree planting activities, and they're going to also do their own march within their schools for the safety of their students not to be able to come out. But on an individual level, I will be doing a lot of speaking to people and encouraging people to take sustainability more seriously. And I'm going to start from my home and just speak to people about, in my community, my neighborhood, about the importance of recycling, the importance of not littering, because litter and plastic is a big issue in this country. Even after the ban of plastic bags, we still have plastic bottles.
We still go to Uganda and buy plastic bags. Across the
Exactly.
border.
We go to Busia and
To be codified. Yes.
So there's all these things happening, and for me, it boils down to the personal me. I have to make sure everybody around me is influenced to take sustainability practices seriously.
Okay.
I encourage my colleagues as well who are already on board at the Society for International Development, but then also to come out and support young people, to raise awareness within schools, and to continue to build the All In for Climate Action movement nationally, but also regionally in Africa.
Okay.
Yeah.
Omar.
Yeah, for me, I'm only involved in the first 2 days. The first day being tomorrow, so I'm involved in organizing and helping support and bringing together everyone. So that's why we are telling even the members of the public, because we have to be examples of taking steps in promoting environmental protection. That's why we're saying for tomorrow, we'll have water, but it won't be in plastic bottles. So carry your refillable bottle, and we'll ensure that you have enough water to use.
Refillable bottle is plastic.
because you cannot say that you're fighting climate change when you're actually part and parcel of contributing. to
Okay,
it.
talk to me about refillable bottle. Which one?
Okay.
Made of?
Plastic. Those are the one use. So you see, there's the one use plastic
Yes,
bottle,
yes,
and then there are the
like
ones that you use them
You used to
for a
recycle.
certain
You
period
can
of
use them
time.
several
Yeah,
times.
so you don't
So
have
carry
to
those
keep.
as-
Yeah, so the
okay.
ones that you'll be reusing them. So we'll be doing that. So tomorrow, as Amayo has said, we're definitely going to go to the ministries, the Ministry of Energy, of Environment. We're going to read a statement, and we've already communicated to them beforehand. The police has been notified, and they have at least said it's fine to do the procession. And on the second day, what we'll be doing is we are going to join the youth and the students in universities to do a march, which is the Catholic University of East Africa.
Okay.
And finally, also, I think most importantly, tomorrow, we are going to recognize some of the youth that have been working on this area, and we are going to award someone through the contribution of Amnesty, an Ambassador of Conscience Award. Pardon my the English is not my
It's
language.
okay.
Yeah. So cascading down, the young people in the county said they also wanted to do something. So we invited them to do activities. For example, the young people in Baringo County said they wanted to discuss the issues around climate change and present their petitions and memorandum to the Baringo County government. So they'll be doing that on the 25th of September. And also the young people in Nanyuki said they wanted to create awareness on the climate impacts around the town. So they'll be doing a march as well as a climate justice festival on the 28th of September.
Okay.
Yes.
No one has spoken about the social media engagement.
Yes,
Yes.
what's also important is the climate strike. The idea behind it is that the adults, or the people who are the parents and the adults, are supposed to be coming out and supporting these youths. And so that's why we're saying, take some time within your work forum, either to come out and supporting the youth, or at least, do something, either share a photo on social media, or do something to show that you are together on this and that you care about the issues and why the climate strike. And definitely we're going to have a lot of engagement on social media. So we'll have some engagements tomorrow whereby we're going to live stream what's going to be happening. We're expecting about 1,000, give or take, youths and people coming out to march. So we're going to live stream it, we're going to share photos, and we hope you were there and that you'll be counted in history as one of the people who were brave enough to speak about the climate.
All right, thank you, and Wangari Maathai will be proud of all of you. But anyone watching will think you have environmental background. So, do you?
No.
What's your background?
Diplomacy, international security.
Diplomacy. What's your background?
I think mine is the most hated, law.
Law, same as mine here. Most a lawyer.
Public policy.
Public policy, and look what you're doing. Thank you very much, Percy, for coming. Thank you, Omar, and thank you, Irene, the second time in the same month. Thank you for coming and sharing. I hope to be part of it, right?